Ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? I'm going to play some PC Building Simulator. Let's continue the career. This is in early access, and I'd like to say it's very early access, like it hasn't been out heaps long. But I've played a fair bit of it, given it over 24 hours so far, and I like it. It has its flaws, but I think it's interesting enough to kind of show and talk about, because it got a lot of hype from a lot of streamers and that sort of thing, which I thought was weird because it's kind of very early access, so you got to kind of know what you're getting into with this thing, because, you know, it's got its own limitations. Of course there's bugs and things, but we're not going to talk about that too much because, hey, it's early access, that's what happens. You know, that's to be expected. It would be kind of weird if it was 100% polished, but, you know, some early access games are, so this isn't one of them though. It does have bugs, there are things to be fixed still, but hey, that's not a problem, I don't mind. That's what you sign on for when it hasn't been released yet. Dig? Cool. So what is it? It's basically if you played like Car Mechanic Simulator or those sorts of games. I can't think of another analog, but you come here, you check your email, you take jobs. What have we got? Oh, we can accept that and that'll come tomorrow. So you get these jobs and it says, hey, it needs fixing. So then you go, cool, and it gets delivered and you go, okay, now I've got to fix this. And the way you do that is by analyzing it, and this looks real dusty, so let's blow that out. So we're just going to blow out some of this dust because that's going to be part of what will help us get this guy up and running. And we're going to remove the case. And now, I've already unlocked all these upgrades like that. You could see I can just remove the case by just clicking on it and it unscrews everything. Obviously when you start the game you don't have those sorts of upgrades and you have to kind of do it all yourself. But for now, we're just going to keep going with what I've got. Because you can see up the top right I'm on level 18. And that means a lot of things. That means I've got certain parts unlocked that are available for me to purchase and then utilize in different PCs and different machines. It also means I have different tools available, such as this air blower, although I think you get the air from the beginning, so that's not necessarily an unlock. So it looks like we've kind of cleaned it out a fair bit at the moment. We're just clicking and holding to blow out all the dust, but it's looking pretty clean. So let's see if we can figure out what's wrong with this computer. We're going to try and power it on right now. And because it is powering on, it looks like it's not a motherboard problem. It's probably a CPU problem, which is what it is, because we've got no CPU found. How about that? So basically what we're going to do is take the CPU out and replace it. Chances are it'll be broken. So we'll come over to remove. You can see down the bottom there's different modes that you can go. You can go cable mode, where you're completely obsessed with cables. Probably not going to see me do that much in this mode because I have all the mods where... Not the mods, I have the upgrades unlocked where my cables just connect themselves automatically. If I hit one, which is install, it brings me here to my inventory where I can select parts. You see I've got some old parts, like old motherboards that I don't really need anymore, so I can sell them because they're broken. I've got some used parts. I've got some parts that I haven't, you know, I've pulled from other machines but haven't actually installed. I've got the stuff from this machine, like the side panels. So that's, you obviously select what you want to install that way. However, right now we just need to remove the air cooler to get to the CPU. We'll unlock the shield. We'll remove the CPU, and let's have a quick look in our inventory by pressing I. It's an Intel Core i5-6400. So we're going to replace that, and that'll probably solve that problem. So let's go to the shop here, CPUs and processors. I like to sort by price ascending. You can just search for the specific one, but price ascending just kind of puts it all in order. I think it was a 6400. Am I correct? Is that what it was? Forget already. Yeah, i5-6400. Easy peasy. That baby right there. So we're going to add that to cart. We're not going to order it quite yet because at the same time we have this PC over here, which is, you can see on the right there, need to diagnose the problem. So again, we're going to just hit P to power it on. See, it automatically plugs in the cables there and all that. No CPU found. Surprise, surprise. Take the cover off, and we'll do the same thing here. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit different. We've got to unplug this air cooler first, and we'll undo the shield, and we'll take the CPU out. And this CPU is an i3-6100T. i3-6100T. Whatever that means. i3-6100T. There we go, that guy. So we'll add that to cart. And that's all we've got at the moment. We need a new CPU to replace that one, and we need a new CPU to replace that one. And actually, that can bring us to one of the limitations of this being in early access. You can see here this job type is diagnose and fix, and that's mostly what you'll end up getting through your emails is diagnose and fix jobs. Like this, diagnose and fix, diagnose and fix. The one that's coming tomorrow is diagnose and fix. So, you know, 9 times out of 10 it's you try and turn it on. If it turns on, it'll show you on the screen what is missing, because it'll say no boot device, or it'll say no RAM, or, you know, CPU, no CPU, blah, blah, blah. If it doesn't boot, it's probably the motherboard, so you have to take everything out and replace the motherboard. But 9 times out of 10, I guarantee you it's either a motherboard problem or a CPU problem. So there's not a lot of variety in that yet. And that's one of the things that needs to be worked on. But let's view our cart, and we'll order them for tomorrow, because then we have to pay less postage. So we'll buy that now, and we'll head off, and we'll call it a day. We'll slowly walk over to the door. We'll end the day. And then next day, you can see we've got these jobs going on. We've got deliveries coming. These are all my previous jobs and deliveries and things. And bills as well. We have to obviously pay bills and that sort of stuff. Let's go to work. So this is our parts that we ordered. Those 2 CPUs. And then this is the other computer that we said we'll fix and that got delivered today. So we need to diagnose and fix this one. So we'll pop it over here on our spare bench. It's got that funky cover. Very nice. But first of all, let's just try and fix these guys by... We can zoom in a bit if we want to look a little bit closer. And let's grab the CPUs that we need for this. Or a CPU, I guess, but this one and the other one. So this is the 6400. We'll grab that and we'll chuck it in. Close the shield. While that's happening, we'll grab the thermal paste. We'll plop some of that on there. If we come to CPU cooling, I believe it was this one. Yep, that's correct. And we'll power it on and see what happens. Yep, it's booting to the OS, and there we go. Lovely desktop picture of some dogs. How about a dog and a cat, rather? Cool. So just to finish it off, we're going to add the side panel here, and we did take off the other one as well, didn't we? Because we were blowing out some dust. So we do the side panels. All good, and you can see up in the right there it says leave by door. So, I mean, I like doing this because it's just funny, but it's all plugged in and it's turned on, but we can just pick it up. So, there's that. So then we plonk it by the door, because that has been fixed, and we can come here to our email, and we can find that job. We can tell them to collect it, and we'll get paid our 560 bucks. And we'll get rid of that email because we don't need it. Come on. There we go. Okay. And because we did that, we now have this. Looks like a case, maybe? I don't know. It's hard to say because I don't recognize it. And we've been offered another job now. You only ever get offered 3 jobs at once, which is kind of a disappointment because you have 3 workbenches once you unlock them all. But you also have this cupboard where you can store things. Like you can see, this is just a case that I bought at one point, which I've never actually used. So I just shoved it in here. And it would be kind of cool if you could fiddle with, say, you know, you can fix 3 at a time, but then you can clear off, put them in the cupboards and add 3 more, put in a big order, and maybe you could have like 10 on the go at a time, and it's only limited by how much can you keep track of everything, if you know what I mean. Obviously there are, you know, if your simulation you want to have some sort of real life limitations, which is space and capabilities, but you know, it feels like I always feel like it's limited for no real reason, if you don't know what I mean. It's an arbitrary, oh, you can only have 3 jobs at once. And it's like, yeah, maybe. So this one again, booting to the OS, so we know it's fixed. Oh, look at those groovy fans. How about that? It's got neons and all that jazz. How about that? No, we don't need that. We need this guy. And we'll actually power him off and pick him up and put him by the door. Because that job is now complete. And you can see the other one's been picked up. Tend to just put them all there, and then like at the end of the day I'll turn them off. So let's see if we can get this guy going. He's not even booting, so I bet you, and I don't know this in advance because I just don't, but I bet you it's a motherboard problem. Wait. So we're going to have to remove... It can be a bit fiddly, but we're going to have to remove a few things. So we've got to remove the graphics card. And again, I have upgrades that will just automatically unscrew things. They don't automatically unclip RAM sticks, unfortunately, but... you know, that's fine. And I will have to undo these plugs and disconnect all the cables from the motherboard if I want to remove it. But that's okay. That's how we roll. I think that's it. But you can see these screws will just automatically undo themselves, and fairly quickly too, because that's an upgrade that I've got. So we'll have a quick look at the motherboard we just pulled, and you can see it's broken. So that's a Gaming Pro Carbon. Z270 Gaming Pro Carbon. Z270 Gaming Pro Carbon. It's that guy right there. So we're going to add that to the cart. We're going to come over here. We're going to tell them to collect that PC, because we fixed it. This one, we'll accept that job, because that job will come tomorrow then. This one... Okay, so this one's actually asking us to replace the power supply unit, which is a unique kind of thing. Many thanks to your previous work, my son has been very happy with the computer and shares me, it runs everything he needs to do his homework. So this is a guy we've obviously either made a PC for or, you know, repaired in the past. So this is kind of like a bit of a story mission, if you want to call it that. But unfortunately, something's wrong, he wants us to replace the PSU. We'll accept that, because that's an easy enough job. No problem. And we'll go back to the shop now, because we know we don't have to order anything else. The reason I hadn't sent this off yet was because sometimes you get a job which is like build a PC, so you want to order all the parts. So now that we know that we're just going to end the day, we can send that off. It'll arrive tomorrow and we'll be back. And that's kind of the gameplay loop. You basically just spend each day diagnosing problems, fixing the problems, ordering parts, you know, putting them into PCs, that sort of thing. And you know, that kind of loop is very satisfying. It's kind of nice to just pull things apart and put them back together again. And it's the kind of thing, it's the reason I like, you know, like car mechanic simulator and that sort of thing. However, I have noticed a few things that I find interesting, and it's the reason I wanted to make this video, was because I like playing car mechanic simulator, for example. However, I don't know anything about cars. In fact, most of what I've learned about cars, I've learned from playing Car Mechanic Simulator. As weird as that sounds. But that game, it doesn't teach you how to fix a car, no matter what you think. But it actually teaches you the names of parts, kind of thing. Just like this does. Like, you can go, okay, that's RAM, that's a CPU, this is a motherboard. You know, if you don't know what these things are, then you're suddenly learning what they're called. So that's cool. However, not knowing anything about cars means that I don't notice in Car Mechanic Simulator when they're doing something, or there's a gameplay kind of obfuscation that means it works for the game, but it's actually quite unrealistic and silly for a car, for an actual realistic car problem. So this is saying no boot device. You probably can't see it over there. So that means our hard drive is failing as well, so we have to pull that out. So yeah, because I don't know anything about cars, I don't notice when Car Mechanic Simulator is being super gamey when it should be better, perhaps. Whereas, the reason I bring it up is because with PC Building Simulator, I notice these things. Because I know how to build PCs, I know PC hardware, I've done it for ages, like a couple of decades now, I've been building my own PCs, I've done it for other people, I've done technical support roles and that sort of thing. So, you know, not trying to sound like I'm anything that I'm not, but it's worth knowing the context which you're going to approach this sort of game, because with a bit of knowledge about PC hardware, it almost is a bad thing for this game. Like, if you're actually really into building PCs, this might not be the game for you. And I'll explain more of that later, but let's just have a look at what I just pulled out with that hard drive. And this will show us, actually, this is a good time. So this hard drive is broken. It's a 500 gig Seagate Barracuda. And so we'll have a look here, 500 gig. We obviously want a new one, this guy. Add that to cart. I'm actually going to same day this because we don't want to wait. We'll just have it right now, even though it costs a shitload. But for the purpose of the video, we'll just grab it now because we can finish this off. But and make the point that I want to make, where this guy's hard drive has failed, obviously. But there's no part of this game which involves any kind of data recovery or backup or anything like that. You just plop a new hard drive in, plugs it in, and job's done. Don't even have to install an OS or anything on a blank hard drive, because the game is not looking at this as a blank hard drive. It's just ticking a box that says, okay, this is a Seagate Barracuda 500GB, which replaces the previous one. It seems like that's all the game is doing, which is fine, but you start to see the cracks, especially when you know that, hey, in the real world, you wouldn't ever just kind of grab someone's hard drive, rip it out and throw it away. You'd at least try for a little bit of data recovery, or at least, you know, cloning the disk before you got rid of it if you could. And, you know, you'll be amazed at how much data you can actually recover from a hard drive. But, yeah, that kind of thing is just kind of really unrealistic and kind of takes you and reminds you that, oh, hang on, this is a game. Which is fine, that's what I mean. I don't want to sound like that's a criticism, because obviously this is a game. But the point, I guess, is in a game like Car Mechanic Simulator, where I don't know enough about cars to really, for those things to really stand out. You know, I'm sure there's plenty in that which is very gamey. So I just had a phone call, so I had to just cut there. But the point is, though, that it's almost like too much information in a lot of ways. Where, because I know how to build PCs and that sort of thing, all the little things which are wrong with this game kind of stand out very, very obviously. And so I wonder, perhaps, if that's a 6600K, by the way, just in case I like to say it, because then I remember. So perhaps if you're like hardcore into building PCs, you're not going to find a lot of satisfaction or a lot to learn even out of this game, because there's not a lot of that in the game. Even though it's called PC Building Simulator, I get it, and I'm not dissing, I'm not ragging on it, like I said, but if you're super hardcore into the hardware aspects and building a PC and all the challenges and logic that goes along with that, you may be disappointed here, because it's kind of like a light, gamey version of building a PC. Having said that, I still enjoy it. You know, I consider myself, I know how to build a PC and I know what I'm doing, and I've done it millions of times before for myself and others, and I still enjoy it. You know, if you can kind of look past that and just go, hey, whatever, this is a fun little game about taking things apart and putting them back together again, then yeah, it's cool. And like, look at this case, this is a fun case. It's all exposed. Oh, I just need to replace the PSU. So I've just gone ahead with this and not really thought about it, what I'm doing, because I'm too busy talking to you lovely people. So anyway, let's pop this stuff back in, because oh dear. But yeah, the more you play it, the more you realize the limitations. And there's a lot of stuff, but oh shit. See, like, well, okay, here's a good example. I just forgot to put thermal paste on. Oh, they must have updated that. So that was a previous bug which didn't really bother me too much, but you used to be able to just put thermal paste on without even taking the fan off. But it's good to see they fixed that. And that's what I mean. This is early access, and it's good to remind ourselves that that's what we're looking at here, is an early access game. And not to be too harsh, because, you know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of time and there's a lot of opportunity for things to be fixed. And obviously, we're going to have to unplug everything if we want to remove the CPU, PSU rather. But let's do that. And what PSU have they got? A Xi'an Power King 250. So we're going to have to order one of those. Xi'an Power King 250. Where are we? Going blind. Here we go. 20 bucks. No drama. And I think that's all we're going to have for that. So let's kick this one we've done. See what other job we get, and then we'll order our parts and call it a day. Diagnose and fix. You can see how a lot of them are diagnose and fix. And there are other job types which I kind of hope we'll get to if I power through some of these other ones. But we'll put that for next day delivery as well, and that'll arrive tomorrow. But yeah. So I mean, we've pretty much seen all of the gameplay loops so far, but there are a few other things which, you know, this is the part of the video where it might sound like I'm criticizing it quite heavily, but there's a lot about this game where I do worry and I do wonder, and I really hope that these improvements get made or that these complaints get addressed, because if they don't, then it's going to be a bit of a lackluster simulator, and it has a lot of potential. And a lot of the time, the reason I get frustrated with these things is because of the potential and lack thereof. See that now boots, and we've got a new PSU in there, so we'll grab that and pop it by the door. And that's really why I get excited about talking about these things, because, you know, this has a lot of potential. It's really fun pulling things apart, and it's really fun that it uses, you know, real world parts and that sort of thing. Obviously, there are deals with different brands and that sort of stuff, because obviously Radeon have things in here. There's some Gigabyte parts. There's a lot of Intel stuff, obviously, and that sort of thing. But there's also a lot missing. If I just pop this CPU in for starters. And, you know, I'm not so worried about the fact what parts are available. Like, I actually think that's the least concerning thing about this entire game. I hope that's the right cooler for this one. Anyway, power it on, see if it boots. While that's happening, we'll add the case. Yep, that's fine. No problems, and we'll pop that by the door. But obviously, you know, being in early access, there are some things that we need to remember. So if we look at graphics cards here, just for the sake of it, we can see there's EVGA GeForce GT, there's Gigabyte, there's Xi'an GeForce whatever, MSI, there's DFL, I don't know what that is, if that's a thing, but but you can see, obviously, we're limited to the brands that the game has, or the developers have, you know, made deals with to have in the game. And that's fine. That actually doesn't bother me at all. I don't care if I can or cannot one-to-one replicate my own PC that I have sitting right next to me right now in real life as I talk to you, because I've got it right there. Like, I don't need to make it in a game. What I do think is interesting, and what they do try and sell a lot about this game, is that, you know, oh, it's got water cooling now. We've just had that update come by. It's got, you know, neons and lights and cool cases and all this kind of stuff, and that's all great. But that's all just kind of, they're Lego bricks, if you know what I mean. The bit that bothers me is more the conceptual stuff, or the design leveled stuff, like the jobs. As in, a lot of the time, we've got to pay rent actually, so let's do that. But you've noticed already, all the jobs we've seen are diagnose and fix, bar that other one which asks us to specifically repair the PSU. So that was cool. But 9 times out of 10, you're getting a diagnose and fix job. So, you know, it's kind of limited in that way. In fact, we can finalize these other ones and see if we get something else. And as you go through, you unlock parts. That's another thing that is kind of frustrating. So up until now, we didn't have Corsair Dominator Platinum 4GB RAM. And that's just RAM. Or we also didn't have an MSI GeForce GTX 1080 Ti Gaming 11GB. That's a big fuck off card. But, you know, a lot of it's gated by your level and how many jobs you do. So at the very beginning of the game, you actually don't have a lot of parts available to choose from, which seems really weird, especially as someone who's worked building PCs and fixing PCs for people and that sort of thing. You know, in real life, I have a wholesaler who I get my hardware parts from at wholesale prices to then fix and, you know, sell on to my customers. So it seems odd that they would limit me with what is available. Every wholesaler I've ever dealt with has been like, hey, here's all the parts we have, and there's thousands of them, because they try and stock everything that you could possibly want. And there's never any limitations on what parts are available for you to work with, other than how much money you've got to be able to purchase them from them. And, you know, the other thing with wholesalers is 9 times out of 10, it'll cost you something for a part, but they'll also have discounts if you buy 10 of them, because they're assuming that you're going to use more than just, say, a single person would use. So for instance, if you decided you wanted some EVGA GeForce GTX 1050 Ti gaming cards, there'd be one price for one, but then there'd be like a heavily discounted price if you bought 10, and an even heavier discounted price if you bought 50. You know, these sorts of amounts that a retail shop would actually use and go through and have in storage, because maybe it's a common part that I'm always trying to replace. You know, like RAM is a classic one. RAM breaks more often than this game gives it credit for. Like, there are so many, and power supply units, actually. That's the first power supply unit I've had broken in a long time on that job that we just had. But the point is that those things in real life are my experience of what's happened and what often is the cause of problems in computers, in different PCs. Whereas in this, it's always your CPU or your motherboard. And motherboards come up every now and then. CPUs rarely come up in my experience. But even that I can put down to, well, hey, that's just my experience where I am and from the work I've done and the customers I've had. So, that's fine. That can be different depending on where you are, or, that's all just random shit anyway. But the focus on trying to get more parts and that sort of stuff, rather than trying to get, say, a different brand of a part, they should be unlocked right from the beginning of the game. Like, from the beginning of the game, you don't have access to, say, a 1080 Ti. The best card you've got maybe is a 1060, not even that. It might be a 980 or something, or a 570, or, These cards are not all available, and I noticed that especially in processors, because you start off with like 6 processors or something. But then, you get a job which says, hey, I need you to make me this kick-ass PC, but you're like, well, the best processor I've got is like a bloody Celeron or something, and you're like, I can give you a Celeron G3 930, that's the best I can do, because that's the only one I've got available, and you're like, okay, and it just seems a bit weird if you ask me, and, so that's probably one of my biggest complaints about this, or one of the biggest areas that I think needs to be worked on and improved, is just the kind of adding a little bit more realism rather than trying to RPG it and have you level up and unlock more parts. There are things like the tools and stuff which are very gamey, which are fine, and I think that's great for tying that to like levels and unlocking stuff perhaps. For instance, like this, the quick screw tool, tap a screw for it to screw in itself. Or the auto screw tool, all screws screw themselves automatically. Now I've unlocked all these because I've bought them and I've leveled up enough. And they are obviously very gamey. They're all quality of life stuff, which I think is appropriate to have as unlocks, because yeah, you should start off like being slow and having to undo every screw, and it being a little bit more laborious than it probably needs to be, or then probably is fun. But these things then make everything quicker, like quick cable tools, auto cable tools. These things make it a lot more enjoyable. They're all quality of life things that you unlock, but they're not actual parts and things that you need to get jobs done. The other thing as well is, as we'll notice here, this is another diagnose and fix. Okay, this is an interesting one. We'll get rid of that diagnose and fix one. But you can see this dude's going to send us his PC. Oh no, he wants a new PC. Okay, cool, that's fine. So he wants a whole new PC. And he wants it to be able to play Minecraft at recommended specs. So to do that, we'll go to Will It Run, which obviously is a very toned down version of the website by a similar name. We'll go to Minecraft, we'll go recommended specs. So obviously he wants at least 1 gig of RAM. This is comparing it to the PC I'm looking at this on, so ignore this side. But he needs at least 1 gig of RAM, he needs at least a 2 gig video card, which is a GTX 960 or better, and he also needs an i5 6400 or better. And he wants us to make that for him as a PC. And that's cool, because that's a whole new build. So it's actually a little bit interesting. It actually makes you want to figure it out. And he's obviously given us a budget. So this payment kind of thing is, again, a little bit unrealistic. Like this is more realistic because he's saying, hey, I want you to build me a whole new PC, and here's basically the amount of money I've got to spend on it. Which we'll accept, because we'll see what that's all about. Whereas like this guy's like, oh, we'll talk about that in a second. This guy's like, hey, figure out what's wrong with my PC. Oh, and by the way, I'm only going to give you $490 no matter what is wrong. So, I mean, in a way it's okay because the game kind of knows what's wrong anyway before that even gets calculated, I imagine. So that's fine. But it's a bit unrealistic because in the real world, if someone's PC is not working, they'd be like, hey, can you fix my PC? And you'd be like, yeah, sure. And you'd work on it. You'd be like, okay, well, that took me X amount of time, plus it cost me this much for the parts, and plus here's my markup. So here's your bill. Thank you very much. See you later. And it's just kind of a different... It feels weird to have someone dictate how much money they're going to give you rather than you say, well, this is how much you owe me, you know? It's like going to a mechanic and saying, hey, my car's not working, but here's $20. Do what you can and make sure you fix it. Because if you don't, then you fail and you suck. But does that make sense? I think that makes sense. Anyway, that even is not so much of a problem because that can all be tweaked with, or it can be excused as being a gamey kind of gimmick, you know what I mean? This stuff I hate. Are you available to upgrade my computer? It has to get 5830 in benchmarks, okay? So this dude is going to send us his computer and he wants us to pull out a 3D Mark score of 5830, which is a pain in the ass and complete bullshit. So basically on any PC you can run 3D Mark. So we can install it and we can run it and, you know, get a 3D Mark score of what that PC consists of. And usually it's a combination between how good your graphics card is and how good your CPU is. And that'll give you a score. So this guy is going to say, well, we'll run it and we'll test it and we'll go, okay, he's got X score, we need to upgrade it to 5830. The problem with that is, though, that's a nebulous kind of thing. And I feel like it's being used as a way for the game to kind of measure whether you're upgrading their computer or not. Because it's kind of like, this is a job type where it's kind of like, hey, computer guy, I'm happy with my computer and it works and everything, there's nothing broken, but can you upgrade it to make it better? And, you know, here's my budget, $690. And you go, okay, cool. So then this is kind of, I feel like this is the way that the game then tests if you have upgraded the computer, because obviously if you get a better score, it's got better parts. But it's also kind of retarded because you've got to kind of guess which parts are like worth what score on 3D Mark. You know, like you might already have a 1060 FTW2 Gaming, which is a 6 gig 1860 megahertz card. So what other card do I need to buy in order to upgrade the score enough? And same with the CPU. And it's kind of, it's just, the score is just the real problem I have with it. It's like, it's because it often conflicts with the budget. So you might want that, but it might end up costing about that much or even a bit more for some reasons I can't fathom. Because in the real world, if someone said, hey, can you upgrade my computer? I'd be like, yeah, cool, how much money you got? And they'd be like, okay, I've got $690. So I'd be like, alright, I will find parts that are better than what you already have, worth up to that amount. And that's enough to go on, because it might be like, okay, I've got $690 and all I want is you to upgrade my graphics card. So you'd be like, okay, cool, I'll give you this one even, if we're not talking labor. I'll give you the MSI GeForce GTX 1080 Gaming X8G. That's going to be what you can afford. And, you know, if that's all you can afford and it's better than what you've got, Bob's your uncle and we're done. Catch you later. Enjoy your new graphics card. If labor was involved as well, then maybe we'd be going, okay, hang on, maybe it's down here somewhere. Like, we'll give you a 1080, this 1080 instead of the better 1080. You know, it's got a slower clock speed, I imagine. Just barely, but it's not as good kind of thing, is the point, and it's a little bit cheaper. But the rest we'll tack on for labor. So you start seeing what I'm talking about here, where this is kind of, seems like a very gamey way. And plus, again, it doesn't sit with me very well because in my experience, I've never had someone come to me and say, yo, I want you to hit this 3D Mark score, brother. Most people don't even know what 3D Mark is when they want you to fix their computer or upgrade it, that sort of thing. They're just like, hey, can you make it better? Yeah, cool, alright. see ya. Here's my budget. And so, you know, again, not too keen on that. And this comes up a lot is kind of the point as well. These jobs come up a lot where if it's not a diagnose and fix, it's probably a can you hit this 3D mark. And I say that after having played this for about 24-25 hours and reaching level 18 and, you know, putting in a decent amount of time with it. And so most of the time I just reject these jobs because screw them, that's a pain in the ass. And I couldn't be bothered. And most of the time I take the diagnose and fix jobs and the new PC jobs. And the new PC ones are the exciting ones. They're the ones that are kind of more fun because you get to just buy cool parts. However, we'll accept this one, but we'll go into this. And just as a side note, if there is anyone from the development team watching, it would be really cool if we could have like an app here that was like a notepad or something like that. Because as it is, I tend to bring up a notepad off screen so that I can take notes about this sort of stuff. But we won't do that right now. We'll just try and use our brains and remember stuff. So we're going to order all the parts that we're going to need for this. However, you'll note that on Will It Run, we've got these specifications and these specifications only. So it doesn't really matter what else we do. We can basically just be as cheap as we want to then get the most markup we can think of. And that's kind of unrealistic too. But anyway, we'll do that as we go. So first thing first, we'll figure out what CPU we're going to get. So we want an i5-6400 because this will also then dictate what motherboard we're going to buy to fit the chipset and that sort of thing. And that's one thing where they have gone into a little bit more detail than in other areas of the game. What did we need, sorry? 6400, yes. So we need this guy. So we'll add that to the cart, and that is a LGA 1151 Skylake socket. And that's kind of the interesting part where they've gone into enough detail that we're going to need a Skylake motherboard as opposed to like a KB Lake or a Coffee Lake or an AM4, you know. So we need to make sure we have an 1151 Skylake motherboard, which is, again, true to life. You need to match your chipset and your socket to your parts, your CPU. But the thing is, we come over here then and we go, oh, the cheapest one for $100 is an 1151 Skylake. But so is this one for $150. And I think maybe they're the only ones. Oh no, here we go. We've got another one for an $190, which is obviously better. And if we keep going... No, that's it. Okay, so we've got 3 to choose from. One of them's 190, one of them's 150, and one of them's 100. So I'm going to order the 100 because it doesn't matter which one you buy. It just doesn't matter. So I'm going to get the cheap one. So that's fine. Okay, next thing. Let's grab a GTX 960. It needs to be at least 2 gig. So let's figure that out. Come over to the shop and GPUs. Where are you? So what is it? 960. In fact, we can even search. We'll just filter it out. So we've got, these are all 960s. So we need a 2 gig 960. Here we go. Gaming LE, which usually means light edition. So it's not as good as, say, the regular just full-on editions, like this guy or this guy. So here we go, $170 for the LE one, 180 for the regular, and 180 for the rest. So we're going to get the cheapest one again. We'll get them this MSI GeForce GTX 960 Gaming LE 100ME. It's 2 gig. It even has lighting. Isn't that fun? And we'll add that to cart. And you can kind of see where I'm getting with this, where you just need to meet whatever it says here, and you're done. Like storage, we need 1 gig. Obviously, you know, you don't need heaps of space to run one game. Need to get rid of that. But we can basically just get them this cheapest as 120 gig hard drive for $20. There's no, like, there are all these drives here, but there's no reason to pick these. Like, why do I want to spend 130 and give them 4 terabytes when I can just spend $20 and give them 120 gig and be done with it? And I get that, yeah, that's fine because you're meeting the specs that they're asking for. However, most people would not be happy with a 120 gigabyte drive these days. That's just weird. And I suppose these parts are here because it's for replacing parts that are broken, but 9 times out of 10 I've never even bought one of these in the game because I've never seen anyone have one. So I don't understand why it's even there. And obviously this is one where we've got very limited choice because there's not a lot of brands in here, but that's fine. Again, I don't really care about that because, again, I'm not going to buy them. I'm just going to buy this one over and over when I need to give someone a hard drive. And that's it for the specs, other than the RAM. So we need at least 1 gig of RAM. So if we come in here, we'll buy the cheapest, shittest 2 gig of RAM because it's just cheap. And the problem with that as well is, let's pretend that we needed 6 gig of RAM. We could buy a Xi'an Titan 2 gig and a Value Supreme 4 gig, or no, better example. Yeah, better example is we could buy the Titan 2 gig, which is 2133 megahertz, and we could buy a 4 gig T-Force Dark Silver, which is 2400 megahertz, and because the 4 and the 2 add up to 6, we could shove them in and they'd just work. And if you know anything about PCs and how to build them, you'd know that ain't gonna work in the real world, because you need multiples of the same amount for starters. You need the same clock speed because otherwise they'll desync and they just won't run. Plus you need particular multiples based on whether it's like dual channel or triple channel RAM and that sort of thing. Did I actually put that in the cart? I think I did. Yeah, okay. So there's a lot of inconsistency there, and that's kind of that's where it's at that point where it's kind of like, okay, it's a game. It's not realistic at all if you're just having to add up the numbers and not actually look at clock speeds or anything like that. Which is interesting because with motherboards you need to look at sockets. So I'm wondering if they're going to bring that in eventually. And you know, you'd have to tutorialize it for people who don't know. But it's easy enough to tutorialize. You could say, hey, you need to have multiples of the same stick to reach your goal rather than just whatever and whenever. And you need to match clock speeds, and you need to basically have, you know, in the real world it's basically buy the multiples of the same one, don't mix and match because it won't work. And it's as simple as that. But anyway, let's continue. We'll finish off this and then we'll probably call it a day. So that's all we need for specs. The rest is up to us. So for starters, power supplies, it doesn't matter. I've always just bought people the 250 watt, $20 power supply. And that's that. See you later. Have a good day. And I've done that on every system I've built, which is kind of weird because, again, obviously some systems require more than 250 watts. You know, my own PC has a 1000 watt power supply because it needs it, because I've got some heavy hardware in there. But in the game, nah, 250 is fine. Again, cases, some of these are different sizes, like this is a little one. So you can see we'll take a mini ATX, a micro ATX, and an SATX. So, you know, although all of these say the same thing. So I'm not sure what my point there is, but it seems like the only difference between cases is whether or not it can fit a big fan or a little fan. But again, when you're building a PC for someone, it doesn't really matter. Let's get the cheapest one, the Silverstone PS14 and Tech, actually I think are a new one since the last update. But we're just going to get the cheapest one for 40 bucks. Who cares? We're also going to get the cheapest fan, because who cares? Case fans come with the case, so we don't need anything fancy there. Cables, again, this is a new thing, and I haven't actually built a PC since they brought this in. So I don't know if we'll need that, but I assume this means you can customize colors and maybe some lighting and things through different cabling. Oh, here we go. Here's some cabling we've never unlocked, actually, because that we need to get to level 20 before we can have pink cabling. I mean, that's just stupid. Like, parts are not limited by skill, which I think is where you get that major disconnect between reality and this. Whereas in other games like Car Mechanic Simulator, as you level up, you gain more skills and abilities or machinery that you need to achieve things. Such as in this game, as you level up, you start off with just one workbench, but you unlock this workbench and you unlock this workbench, and you even unlock this cupboard. Which makes sense because as your business grows, you get more money, you get more capabilities, you add in more parts, it allows you to do more business and all that kind of thing. That makes sense. But as far as a supplier would be concerned, it's like, yo, you'd have it all available anyway. So anyway, you can see now we've populated our cart with everything we need for a new PC. but we're only going to spend 590 bucks on it, and this sucker's going to give us just about 1500. So we're going to triple our money. How about that? But first of all, let's just see what's wrong with this PC. We'll try and power it on. Okay, so it's probably the CPU. Yep, no CPU. You can see how this does get repetitive. We'll take that off, we'll undo that, we'll take that off. Take out the CPU basically. It's an i3-7300. So let's go over here and we'll come to the shop. i3-7300. Where are you? You're around here somewhere. Oh, there you are. i3-7300. Add to cart. And that's all we've got going at the moment. Is there anything going on out here? Nope. This is for the PC that we're going to build because obviously we don't have a box. So what we can do is we can just put that here, and this will be where we build the new PC when our parts arrive tomorrow. So let's just order those. And next day delivery, buy now, and we'll go pick them up. But while we're doing this, I mean, that's why I said before, like, I hope, you know, don't get the wrong impression. I'm not just bitching about this for the sake of it. It's more because there's lots of potential here, and I really think that this has the potential to being a nice in-depth simulator that could even teach you a few things. But at the same time, it's kind of like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't really work the way that it should. And, you know, and that might be good enough for most people. But that's where I say, you know, if you're really into building PCs and you're really into PC hardware and that sort of stuff, then maybe you won't find what you're looking for here, I guess is the point. See if that's going to boot. Yep, it's going to boot. So we'll put the case on. And that guy's done. Let's pick that up. And that's what I mean where, you know, having different brands sign on, you know, like maybe I want to buy a Corsair power supply unit. At the moment I can't do that because the only ones we've got are Xi'an, EVGA, Cooler Master, blah 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 blah. Oh, no, we do have a Corsair. Okay, my mistake. That must have been put in. Maybe it's been there the whole time. I don't know because I never look at the more expensive power supply units. But okay, to look at my own personal computer, I have an Antec 1900 or 900, I can't remember, but it's a full tower for my case. And I don't think that's... Yeah, the only Antec we've got here is this, and it's a mid-tower. And that's fine. And that's kind of the point I'm making, is like, I don't care. I see a lot of stuff on the forums for this game about, you know, what parts should be put in, and people suggesting, oh, can you put this part in, because I've got an Antec case or whatever. And like, that's the last thing I feel like they should be working on, because at the end of the day, that stuff's just dressing. Like, that's not going to make a big part of the difference to the actual gameplay. That just gives you more choice. The things that I feel should be worked on more are things like, you know, the mission variety, or the job variety, I should say, rather than mission, because it's not really missions. But, you know, having better jobs rather than just, can you meet this 3D Mark score? And that's it. And it's like, eh. Or, you know, maybe different levels of detail. Like maybe it's a setting that you can apply where you say, hey, yeah, I want to go hardcore on making sure I've got the right RAM chips and that sort of stuff, and clock speeds and all that. Or even just improving it so that it's a little bit more consistent in that way. So, you know, you can start to see how, if you are getting hardcore about it, you might be a little bit disappointed. Because at the end of the day, a lot of it doesn't matter. And let's actually just figure... I do this in real life as well. I never remember which bits need to come off. So, take that off first. And this guy. And, you know, to be fair as well, this is very early access, and that's kind of the point of this as well, is to say that it is early access, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that's to be remembered. So before getting all super hyped about a PC builder, perhaps just remember that, it might not, you know, fulfill all those needs if you're already into it and already knowledgeable about such things. Hopefully that makes sense. And, you know, stay tuned on the channel, because I have a a video about Car Mechanic Simulator coming up as well, and I reference this as well because I think they're a good contrast to each other for me, because I'm coming at this game with PCs knowing what I'm doing and, you know, having experience in the PC building / tech support world in real life. And, you know, even things like this, like the cables sticking out through the case, like that doesn't bother me. I don't really care. Yeah, it's a bit janky, but it's not exactly something I'm going to get annoyed about. Is that? No, that is to be fixed. Is this to be fixed? Did we fix this? We did fix this. Okay, cool. Whereas, you know, with, as I said before, with Car Mechanic Simulator, so this is probably the motherboard because it's not turning on. But, you know, with Car Mechanic Simulator, there are probably similar things like the RAM stuff here, but in regards to cars that I don't notice, or I just don't care because I don't know enough about cars. But if you are a mechanic, or if you are really into cars, you might take issue with a few things in Car Mechanic Simulator, because you might be like, well, that's just really stupid, and they've done that because it's a game and to make it more gamey. And so that's why I've got a lot of, you know, I've got a lot of time for this game and the things that are very gamey about it, because I think, well, maybe I'm just being hard on it because I am that particular anyway, and it's something I actually know about. Speaking of which, we've got to check what that motherboard was. Z170 Fortune X. Come on. Oh wait, they're already dummy. Fortune X, that guy. And did we? Oh, that's it. The others are done. Okay, cool. So that's the only part we're going to need right now. So you can see, basically, we're going to wrap it up about here. But you can see that this is very early access, and I hope that it's given you a good enough look to be able to. Oh, this is the PSU guy again. See, this is where it's interesting. Like these are obviously tailored; they're not random. So you know, now he wants us to replace his graphics card. So it's like, okay, cool, man, I get it. And these jobs are the best because they're not just a procedurally generated like diagnose and fix, if you know what I mean. And these ones are cool as well. Like, I need a new PC, but like we saw in the previous one, there's no reason not to just give them all the cheap parts and pocket the rest of the money. Like, there's no reason to spend close to this budget on this guy's PC, because I reckon like the other one had a similar budget and we only spent $500 because fuck them, we'll keep the change, and you know, there's no reason not to in this game. But yeah, I am going to leave it there actually, because I think we've gone on long enough. But yeah, the point I hope is to see is that, like, yeah, this is cool and it's actually a lot of fun and it's very enjoyable and relaxing to play, and you know, it's very much just pulling things apart and putting them back together again, like I've said before. And I like that kind of stuff, so that's why I dig this game, even in this state. But I hope that a lot of the potential that I see in this game gets fulfilled. And, you know, that's the point of early access, isn't it? To see if that does happen. And that's where, you know, I'm not usually one to buy into early access games. Like, I tend to avoid them like the plague, unless they are somewhat interesting and niche, like this is for me. Or if they're, you know, they have a reputation of being like bloody good, kind of like Factorio or something, where it's still in early access, but everyone knows that game is, you're going to get a lot of game right now that's good quality if you get into it. So, you know, this one, you have to be into the niche. It's not by default something that's going to satisfy you, I think. And that's fine. That's okay. And I like things being niche, because it means if you're really into it, you're going to really be into it. But for now, that's where I'm going to leave it. Like I say, it's good. Check it out. There'll be links in the description, all that kind of thing, if you want to go check out the game and try it for yourself. But for now, that's me playing a bit of PC Building Simulator. I mean, there are other things as well which are completely silly. Like, it would be nice to be able to customize this room, or make use of this shelving, which is just decoration, or change these posters, which are obviously just big ads. And I'm sure that's kind of part of the deal, maybe. I don't know. It's a cynical thing, but I feel like part of the brand deal might be, well, yeah, you can use our branded parts in your game if you pop ads on the wall, but some of these are just for websites and stuff like this shit. I don't want to see that crap. If this was actually an office of mine, I'd be throwing up posters of stuff I actually want. So, you know, it would be nice if we could customize this a bit. But hey, that's just being ultra picky and wish listy, because most of this doesn't actually matter. You don't even have to water the plant. But that's where I'm going to leave it. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and yeah, hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.